And for those of you who don't know me, and I'm going to talk about the PowerShell ISE and ways that you might want to use it to speed up things that you're doing in terms of writing scripts or even just using on a daily basis. I do lots of PowerShell stuff. I write a lot, I speak a lot. Some of you have seen me before. People come up and go, oh yeah, I know who you are. Go, okay, well thank you. And all the slides and everything will be available down in a few days. You can download all my demos and stuff. So if you got to hurry up and try to scribble things down, I've got some links, which will also be in the slide deck. So I'm going to talk about the ISE, snippets, but hopefully more than just what you may be used to with snippets, tips and tricks, that sort of thing. How many of you use the ISE on a daily basis to do your work? Do you find it an easy thing to work with? Is it limitations? There should be limitations. That should be your answer. The important thing to realize, the ISE was never intended to be a full-blown scripting environment, not an IDE. It's not a replacement for Visual Studio. It's not a replacement for commercial tools like Sapien's PowerShell Studio, or even some of the other free tools like PowerShell Plus from Idera, all those other things that you may have seen. It was primarily designed to be a replacement so you did not have to use Notepad. Anyone using Notepad to write your scripts? Yeah, you know. He's hanging his head. Yeah. I'm not against using Notepad if your command is 2 lines and you know what you're doing. Fine. If it's a quick and easy, throw away something you're never ever going to do again, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of writing PowerShell scripts, fine. But Notepad gets you nothing, brings nothing to the party. So the ISE was designed to give you something other than Notepad, and it's also something that's available on all your client machines. It's free, that's a biggie. You don't, if your company has the money to buy a full-blown tool, go for it. Also for a lot of people using PowerShell, I'm assuming most of you consider yourself like IT professionals as opposed to developers, right? So you're responsible for maintaining servers and user accounts and mailboxes and SharePoint and SQL, and when there's a problem, people call you, right? Okay. So tools like Visual Studio, I certainly don't want my audience, my community of IT pros, to have to be a developer to use PowerShell to write good scripts and to have to learn how to use Visual Studio to do that. So we can use the ISE for that. I use the ISE every day because I do a lot of writing and courseware development and all that, so I'm constantly writing PowerShell code. And for me, every little keystroke that I can save, any little 5 seconds of time that I can do through a little trick or shortcut, something in the ISE, for me anyway, that starts adding up throughout the day and throughout the week. So I get a little more done, and then I'm also reduces my frustration level. I have something I'll try to remember to show you I recently published. Because I work in a lot of different files at once, I can never remember what file was I just working on, what did I call it, and it may be something that has been released or erased from the most recent run list because I've had to work on something else, and all of a sudden 20 files I've edited between that and the last time I was working on something. So I said, I need a better way to find what am I working on right now. I've got scripts that are associated with the articles I'm writing. I want an easy way, so I came up with a way to do that, and those are the kind of things I want to share with you. I really don't have many slides. In fact, that's pretty much it. The other slides at the end, there are some links. So I'm going to show you some of these now, because I'm going to spend the rest of the time in demo. So if we don't get to it, you can at least see that they are here. We'll do questions and answers, website information, make sure you do the evals and stuff. All right, so slides are done. So we're going to start with the ISE object model. Now I'm going to assume already that all of you know what the PowerShell ISE is and know all the different menu options and how to configure it and show command and all of that. If not, well, I'm just gonna make that assumption. You can learn the other way. And you're gonna see that I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. The number one tip that I'm gonna recommend, I've got little tips and tricks here towards the end, is learn the keyboard shortcuts. I like personally having the scripting pane full screen as opposed to having it on the bottom or the side. And so Control R toggles me back and forth between the two things because I like being able to see everything. I can run the line, and then if I need to jump back, Control R, right? So even just that little bit saves me, because the more I can keep my hands on the keyboard instead of reaching for the mouse all the time to do stuff, again, that's one of those little things that starts adding up over time. So the PowerShell ISE has its own object model. And that object starts with the $PS ISE built in by default. All right, so you can just type PS ISE and look at that. And you can see all the key properties, and that is not showing very well on the screen versus what I see on the computer. Because this should say current, that's what's getting cut off there. Let me see if I can. I won't go full screen, we'll just have to go with that. Make it a little bit bigger.
Too much.
Yep, too much. I'm not quite sure.
That's okay.
Sneak it back just a little bit. All right, so we'll go with that. So we have this full object model built in by default, and you can do things with this object model. How many of you have ever played with this object model? Oh, okay. Well, then you can come up and help me with some of this. Or actually, watch the stuff I'm doing, and then at the end, I'm going to ask you for your tips that you do with the ISE that I didn't cover. So just have to remember to call on you. And the rest of you, remember who raised their hand so you can ask them. So one of the things, for example, that you can get is the current file that you're working on. Now, this is just an object, right? So if I want to know more about this object, same thing that you would normally do, right? You do PS ISE, and of course you get the nice IntelliSense here, current file, pipe it to get member, right? So we can do the same, it's just another object in PowerShell. It just happens to be built in. They've given us something to expose. And because you're an IT pro, you should know how to work with objects and get member. I'm not going to do anything. Is that true? Yeah, nothing I'm going to show you is going to dive into working with the AST. I'm not going to compile any code. I'm not making GUI-based tools. I mean, Tobias's tool, how many of you have used ISE Steroids? It's a great tool, but it's not, and it's something that someone like Tobias or someone with a developer bent would create, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad he's done that to help a lot of people, but I want to do things and share things with you that, oh, you know what, that tool doesn't do that, or I have something that is unique to my situation that I'd love to find a way, could I save a few keystrokes, something that would make this easier for me, assuming that you're using the ISE. So you're going to learn this object model. It's really not that difficult. There is another property called the editor. So you get PS ISE, current file, editor. And the editor does things like tells you how many lines in your script, where your cursor is, the text of your script, what's actually been selected. And if we look at that for a get member, there's some cool methods here. Look at this one here, insert text. Actually, I guess I should do it on here for people seeing the video so they know what I'm talking about. There's an insert text method. There's a select method. There's a clear method. So hopefully you're starting to already think about, oh, I could use that and put text inside a file or get text out of a file. Knowing I have that file, the current file has properties that shows me the editor, whether it's been saved or not, its path, where is that file located. So programmatically, I can find what I'm working on very easily. And I have some things that I do that take advantage of that fact. In fact, there's also, again, a lot of this is for the discovery, there's a property current tab. Lots of properties that explain what's going on. For me, the important one is the files property, which gives me a collection of those file objects. It's just a collection like anything else, so you can enumerate it, look at the files you have open, look and see which ones have been saved, which ones have not been saved, if you want to change the encoding. They're just properties, and most of these can be modified. And then the last important piece to building your own tool set here with the ISE is the add-ons menu. I think I hit the wrong, didn't do F8. So the add-on menu is this thing up here. And you can see I've already added on, I'm going to talk about this module in a little bit. You can create your own add-ons, and this is the easiest way to do it, because then you can assign keyboard shortcuts to your tips and tricks that you're going to come up with, or if you want to reuse the stuff that I'm doing. There are other add-ons. There's this link here will take you to a Microsoft site, and there are some other tools that you can download and install, and then they'll show up. That's not counting things like the script analyzer and some of the new V5 stuff that you get. That's kind of completely separate. That typically shows up here when you have the view, when you have like the command add-on, like that. Those typically show in this column on the side. Or, you can create your own add-ons menu, and what you do is there's another property called submenus, and that's typically where you're going to create your own, and I'll show you how we can do this. You can create your own menu and then put in your own menu items, and so you have your own tools that you are building. Any questions on any of that? Pretty clear? PSIC, and then you can just keep drilling down and just looking at the different properties and methods if you forget. Yes?
Do you know if the side panel there is available to...
So the question is the side palette available? I believe it is. Let's double check here. PS ISE current visible horizontal tool. I think that is... let's see if it's under options. I have seen that. There is a way to turn that on and off through PowerShell. I'll have to try to find that. I've seen that in here somewhere. I just don't remember off the show toolbar, show outlining, show line numbers. No, I don't remember off the top of my head where it is in that object model, but I believe it is there. So let me show you here. I've got a little demo to add something to that menu. So I still use Notepad. So I'm going to create a shortcut to my menu that will allow me to start Notepad. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to get that submenus object, because you can't really, you can, but you go to that submenus object, has an add method. That method takes 3 parameters. The first is the text that you want to be displayed. The second is a script block, which can be as long as you need it to be, or you can call a script or whatever you want, call a function defined in the IC, but it's a script block. That's why it's in curly braces. And the only thing I'm running in that script block is notepad.exe. And then optionally, you can add a keyboard shortcut using Control plus whatever keys, or Alt plus, or Control plus Alt plus whatever you want. If you don't want a keyboard shortcut, just use $null. But you have to, the method needs to have 3 parameters or arguments, otherwise you'll get an error. And this is, if this is something I wanted all the time, this is a command that you'd put in your PowerShell ISE profile script. I'm going to talk about profiles in a little bit, a little more detail. So I can just select that line, run it. Now this will write an object to the pipeline, so if you were putting this like in your profile, you'd probably pipe that to out null, so you don't really want to see that. But I kept it in so you could see this actually writes another object to the pipeline. But now, if we come up here and look at my add-ons menu, there is Open Notepad. And I can do Control-Alt-N, and it works. So you can put in whatever code that you want. And because I showed you that ISE object model, and there are things that you can do programmatically to manipulate the files that you have open or the files that you want to work with, you can start getting really creative and start building tools. Or you may want to manage other things in your environment, but right from the ISE. I want to open up the event viewer, or I want to create a new remote session to 5 different servers, and I've got a little script that will do that. You can put that in the PowerShell ISE, give yourself a keyboard shortcut. Remember, I like keeping my hands on the keyboard. I don't want to have to move to a mouse and navigate up to the add-ons menu and click and poke, or poke and click, or whatever. If you try to run this again, this is especially true if you're building something and you're kind of debugging it, trying to get your commands to work. If I were to run this again, I'm going to get an error. I'm going to get an error. It's kind of hard to read that there, but the error basically is the keyboard shortcut is in use. So it will check, and I've not found a good way to go through and identify all of the keyboard shortcuts that are currently in use. That's on my wish list of finding a way to do that. Now, if I were to change this though, and now rerun it, it will happily run it, and now I have 2 choices. The real way to do this if you're debugging is you exit PowerShell, ISE, start again. Now this session, that shortcut I made, if I do new PowerShell tab, as my PowerShell profile script's got to run, they don't show up in the new PowerShell tab. So it's like anything else, those things are scope specific. This ISE scripting geek module showed up because that's in my profile. But my little notepad thing doesn't carry over. Just so you know that. So here's another way that's a little more complicated. Well, not too complicated. I'm doing more than just running Notepad. I'm going to define a script block that's going to say if the current file that is open, basically the current file that has focus here, that you are looking at, that's the current file. I'm looking at the isSaved property, which I know from looking at that object and with getMember, it's a Boolean. So if it is saved, I don't have to do equals true because if it's there, that is true by default. If it's true, then I'm going to open up the file in Notepad. Otherwise, I'm going to display a warning that the file has not been saved. And I can use Notepad and use that current file full path to know where that file is. Maybe not something too practical, but I just wanted to demonstrate the concept here. So I'm going to find my action. And then add, in this case, Control-Alt-O, and I'm piping it to out null because I don't want to see the output. If there's an error, you're still going to see the error. And now I should have open current file in Notepad with the shortcut of Control-Alt-O. So this file I'm currently working on has not been saved, right? Because the little asterisk, you know you've seen me typing in it. So if I try to run this, I should get my warning, which I do. But if I were to go back here to something that has been saved, Control-Alt-O, so I'm able to take advantage of accessing files that I'm working with in the ISE, doing something with them. And for me, that's the big time saver. You can add a sub-menu as well. So if you don't want it to go, and that's what I would recommend, instead of tacking everything in under add-ons, create a sub-menu, which is what, moved over again, which is what I did with my ISE scripting gig. So I created, and you see a whole hierarchy of sub-menus. You can do that by still using the sub-menus add and the name that you want, but there's no script block and there's no keyboard shortcut. So it's just $null and $null. And when you run that line, then there's my tools. Now the good thing, the best thing to do is save that to a variable, as I did there, $menu. That way I can now insert new tools and reference that object. Because this object now is a submenus object, which has that add method. Otherwise I have to go through the hassle of trying to enumerate my submenus. That's too much work. So save it to a variable. So I'm going to define here a little private function that I'm only going to use in the IC. So that's why I'm not worrying about naming conventions. It's called insert me, and all it's going to do is basically define a here string called $info. It's going to insert it in a region, and it's going to insert some information like who I am, my computer name, the operating system, the date, PowerShell version table, and a company name. And I'm going to take that here string and insert it into the current file. Whatever file I happen to be in, wherever the cursor is in that file, that's what I'm going to insert. I'm going to take that command and add it to my little My Tools menu. See, I'm using my menu, insert info, calling my function, insert me, and giving it a keyboard shortcut of Control-Alt-I. So let's get that to work. And I already have something using Control-Alt-I. Let's do Control-Alt. I don't know if that'll work. Okay, Control-Alt-K seemed to work. So now I can have my script open that I'm working on, and I want, in terms of my, say, my practice is to have some meta information about who wrote the script and where it was created. So now, instead of me having to remember to type all that information, that's a lot of stuff to type, and what's my operating system and all that, I can now do Control-Alt-K, and there it is. And it's inserted into a region, so I can collapse it. And I even have this as a, because that's just a comment block. So I didn't have to type any of that, programmatic, just like that. So if you were to type all that, well, you probably would have quit after the first line. But now I have a really quick and easy way to insert some information. So if you have boilerplate, you know, I'm building a file and I've got a template and there's always some disclaimer or some piece of information that I always want, or you want to somehow build a template or pieces of a template, that's what you do. I have a number of shortcuts like that that actually are turned into snippets. We'll talk about snippets in a moment. So I can do, for example, I have a standard disclaimer that I can just do it. I could, or some of these things you could do like I did and add to the menu. And this could also, no, this could not be a snippet because this has code that's actually evaluated at runtime. Snippet's all static text. That's why I didn't do this as a snippet, because I won't be able to get the date and the PowerShell version. This is static. So that I made into a snippet, which I think is the next thing that I'm going to talk about. Any questions on using the object model to create your own little shortcuts of things that you can do with the files? I've got other examples. Yes?
What version of PowerShell was this introduced? How far back does it go?
The ISE, so the question is, how far back does the object model go? At least to version 3. Yeah, let's just stick with that. I don't think it's version 2, but hopefully none of you are running version 2 on your desktops that you're using to manage your environment. If you are, I feel very sorry for you. And by the way, I am running on Windows 8.1 with PowerShell version 4. Everything I'm showing you as far as I know should also work in V5. And I'm not using anything with the AST, which can really make my head hurt. I have to drink more before I can get into that. But you know, it's just an object, so I can understand objects and methods. And to me, this is pretty simple. Granted, I know some of you may be still kind of new and getting used to PowerShell, so some of this may look a little arcane. Just let it sink in, let it wash over you, like going to the beach and letting the water hit you. Eventually, enough of it will go up your nose that you'll get it, okay? Or in your mouth, or whatever body part happens to be most open to the water. All right, so any other questions on this before I move on? Okay, watch the time here. So snippets, now you all know Microsoft ships out of the box lots of snippets. And you can access those snippets all with, let me do a new file here, Control-J. And then you can find what you want. So if I want to insert a do loop. So it saves you a lot of time by getting the habit of doing Control-J and seeing if there's a snippet. Now, the great thing is that you can build your own snippets. It's a little difficult, but I have some stuff that will make it easier for you that I'm going to share. So there are a set of commands in the ISE module: get ISE snippet, import, and new ISE snippet. So get ISE snippet, if you were to run this from PowerShell prompt, all of the snippet files are just XML files. And I've got a lot here because I have added a lot. And they're in your PowerShell folder under a snippets directory. Okay? These exist by default. But it's just XML. Now, there is a commandlet, new IC snippet, that you can run to create a new snippet. You give it a title. That's the title that's going to show up when you do Control-J. Some longer description if you want. The text, that's basically what's going to be inserted in the snippet. And then optionally you can insert an author string. There are ways you can also specify where you want it indented. I think that's the caret offset. But it's kind of tedious, I think, to have to try to type all those things, especially if you want a more complex piece of code to go into the text, right? If I just want to create a snippet that just puts in copyright 2016, that's probably pretty easy to do from here. But for me, that's still a lot of typing. But for the demo, I can show you this. So I can create a snippet right from, actually I'm not going to do this, I've already run this because I've already created the snippet. But if I wanted to, I could insert something that has my name, so the description, so the text would be my name, MVP, and my Twitter handle. So I could run that, it would then create the file. And using psedit, that's the actual file that it creates. And you can see pretty self-explanatory, title, description, and then the text. Not too bad, except it's still a lot to type. Forgot where I'm at here. And just to prove that it works, let's come here, let's delete all that. So there's another keyboard shortcut that you all need to know, Control-A, right? Some of these keyboard shortcuts, same you've used in other programs, but if you don't get in the habit of using them, otherwise I got to select the mouse and go through and find everything, boom, Control-A, and it's all gone. Control-J, M, Y, my name. I just won't touch anything, see it pops up and gives me, there's the description, and I hit enter, and there it is. Obviously, normally I would put that in a comment block that would be working. So here, what I would normally do, just to give you an idea, is I would build a multi-line comment with the pound symbol and not the love symbol. Still can't do it. And I would do Control-J, my name. Of course, I can't do this while I'm talking and typing at the same time. Control J, I have a little, I'm also wearing my bifocal, so I can't, instead of my close-up glasses. Learn more, I have my little that, Control J, disclaimer. So I have all these little pieces. Control J, find a snippet, slam it in, slam it in, slam it in. Now I could, you could, if this is something that you use all the time, then just build a snippet that puts it all in. But I've broken things down into little more discrete blocks, depending on what it is I'm doing. Sometimes I don't need the disclaimer because I already have it from something, and I just want to update and put in my little learn more link. Okay, so that's why, for me, that's why things are split up that way. And we have 15 minutes. So instead, what I did, instead of having tried to use that new ISE snippet, I wrote a function. It's called convert code to snippet, and it's part of this Scripting Geek module, which I will show you, tell you how to get it. And all that function does, I can show you the code. I am using some Visual Basic stuff to give me a graphical pop-up box, because I found that if you're in the ISE, you're kind of thinking graphically anyway. So, but I'm for the most part using the ISE commandlets to do all that. Well, we don't need to read the code. Let's just run it. So I'm going to my code modify snippy. Snipify with the. Okay, so I'm going to create. I want to create a snippet because maybe I'm doing some stuff that I want to put the line in to require the SQL PowerShell module. It's not necessarily that much to type, but I'm lazy. So my shortcut that I use is Control-Alt-S. So now I'm running my little convert to code snippet. So I enter a title, and let's say require SQL PS. Prompt me for a description. This is required. An author, it defaults to your name, which. And now I can come, let's go to a new file here. Control N, new file, Control J. What did I just, requires. One of these is left over from previous demo. The snippets, once you create them, are persistent, right? Because they're written to disk. If you want to get rid of a snippet, you have to delete the XML file and then restart the ISE if you really want it to be gone. When you load the ISE, it basically kind of loads all those snippets ahead of time. So now, just like that, easily created a snippet. This is important because the whole point of writing PowerShell scripts is you only write it once. So if you have a block of code, say, oh yeah, I'm going to use this a lot, or in repeated scripts, and that's why I wrote this, because I do that, is I select my block of code, my shortcut to create the snippet, put in the title and description, done. Now I always have that block of code that I can insert as a little building block as I'm building my scripts, and it has saved me probably 2 minutes. If that saves me 2 minutes building 5 scripts, boom, I've saved 10 minutes. I've got time now to go get a cup of coffee. Or I can get done 10 minutes earlier, or whatever you want to do with those 10 minutes. So those, for me, that's where the benefit comes. Just those little bitty incremental time savings, or even just the frustration savings, make me calm, not require so much bourbon. It's good that way. So snippets are really good. So then you can delete the snippet and it'll stay there. Any questions on snippets? I have like 5 minutes to do my tips and tricks, and then some of you are going to tell me what you do with the ISE. All right. This is just kind of a general list of things that I have found useful, and some things that people don't, oh, I didn't know you could do that. When you are writing a script in PowerShell, my first tip is insert spaces around the equal sign. in the Power, and what I mean by that is, if you were in the PowerShell ISE, I want $A to equal get service. Notice I'm not getting any IntelliSense help. And that's because PowerShell sees this all as one string. And so the parser says, I don't know what you're typing. Whereas, if you get in the habit, now I can hit tab, and now I can get the tab completion because there's that delineation. So it also makes your code, I think, easier to read. It's a small thing. For a lot of IT pros who are new to scripting, you may think, I'm just going to slam it all together. You can. It'll still run. It just makes your writing a little more time-consuming and more error-prone. Get in the habit of using tab completion. But you have to also pay attention. Tab, there we go. Because then you're going to get rid of typos. Because I could easily have tried to type get service, and if I'm trying to talk at the same time, I'm probably going to mistype it. But PowerShell is not going to detect that that is an error. See, there's no red squiggly. Because maybe get servy is a valid command, but PowerShell doesn't know about it. Whereas if I use tab, so I'm not going to know that that's an error until I try to run my script. So if I do this with tab completion, and by the way, when you're in something like this, that's partially finished, my cursor's somewhere in there, you can just hit tab and it will complete it for you. You don't have to move your cursor anywhere. PowerShell profile. Actually, the other real trick here to this tip is psedit. The command psedit, you can run from the PowerShell ISE, and you can load any file you want. Hopefully there's nothing too embarrassing in a.txt. Any file you want just with psedit. You don't have to go and navigate. You saw I used tab completion, so I have to type the full name to the path. Saves me a little time. You can do the same thing with your profile script. Now, so here's my profile script for the ISE. What I really need to point out here, hopefully those of you are aware of this, you have multiple profile scripts in PowerShell, right? You're all aware of that? You have scripts that are unique to the PowerShell host that you are in. Now in this case, the host, that's where you see like current user, all hosts, current user, current host. That's under the documents, Microsoft.PowerShell. In this case, it has ISE_profile.ps1. If you look at this in the console, and that is the default value that you see when you just do $profile. See, this one is PowerShell, so it's unique to the host. So, and there's also then, so there's current user, current host, and then current user, all hosts. So what I do, because I'm in both the console and the ISE all day, I have some things like variables and shortcuts and functions and stuff that I want to have regardless if I'm in the ISE or the PowerShell console. All of those things go in current user, all hosts. Then in my PowerShell ISE profile, this one here, I put in all my commands to load my module, to create my shortcuts. So I've got things that are only work or make sense in the PowerShell ISE. You can see I'm using the ISE object model to manipulate. That's how I'm setting my script pane so it's maximized. I can set how close you want to zoom in. So you can configure the ISE just like you do the PowerShell profile. Actually, you can go a little further because you can configure what it looks like, not just what it can do. I've got some other things in here that I then call and build and load my module. I'm running out of screen space here. So it's very useful to do that. If you are in the PowerShell console, just type ISE, open up the console. Open up the PowerShell ISE. What I typically do is I run the console in elevated privileges. And if I want to start the ICE, I just type ICE, ICE opens, elevated. For me, that saves me, again, I don't have to go to my menu and find run administrator ICE, it's too much work. F1 help. This, a lot of people like this because they don't know about this. Let me find a, oh, I can't do that. Come on. Oh, not caps lock, tab. There we go. If you put your cursor anywhere in a commandlet name and press the F1 key, you get pop-up help. So you don't have to go and look and try to find it. Put your cursor, and you don't have to highlight the word. As long as the cursor is anywhere in there, F1, you're good to go. By default, PowerShell IC will use local help, but you can configure it to use online help. You modify the PC options, use local help, and set it to false. Then when you do that F1 for help, it's like doing help-online, and it'll open up help in your browser.
Will that also work for modules that you've created that are in the profile, the module search path?
Yeah, it will.
Okay, automatically, yeah.
I'm pretty sure, because the IC has no way of knowing that this is a local module or this is from Microsoft or whatever.
So it doesn't need to be .sourced already or module loaded?
Yeah, if the module's loaded and you have, but it has to have online help if you set this to online. Oh, but yeah, if you have a module loaded that has help, yeah, it will, and you do F1, it'll load up the help.
But you know how in PowerShell you might not have a module loaded, but it starts typing command, and when
Oh yeah, it's because PowerShell 3, they introduced the auto loading.
Yeah.
I think it will. I haven't. You'd have to test that. Use regions. Put in. Pound region. Something, and then end region. The nice thing is those then collapse. So take advantage of regions. Now speaking.
Case sensitive. It's case sensitive. I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think the region. Yeah, they need to be lower case. Yeah, I ran into that.
Common region or code region? Is it what like?
I'm sorry. What was that?
So does it work with code in the middle, or is it a comment based set?
No. Now in here you can run whatever you want, and that's the nice thing is you can then collapse that region. Control M will toggle between opening and closing all collapsible sections in the IC. If you have a function, because functions will automatically do that. I'm going to run out of time here. If you have a function, collapse the function. And if you want to load that function in your PowerShell IC, you don't have to go and try to select it all with the mouse. Collapse it, just select that line that says function in your definition, hit F8, and that loads it all in your session. Oh, and you can open multiple files like PSEdit, start at PS1. If you want to open all the PS1 files or whatever text file that you can open. Now, real quickly here, this Scripting Geeks module that I wrote has a lot of commands, all using the IC object model. These are all written as script files, so you can go in and look at the code and all that. These on GitHub, I have a JDH IT Solutions repository, and you'll see you can go and download this module and install it. So I have things that I've been, and I'm still working on this, but I have things, for example, I've taken advantage of the IC model to try to insert bookmarks. So I'm working on this script, it's kind of long, and I want to easily jump back to a particular location in a file. So that's what the bookmarks are doing. I've got some commands to convert different pieces of, for example, convert code to snippet, things that will open and close files, save files as ASCII. This is my current work. So I have basically, if I'm working on a file and I want to say, oh yeah, I'm working on this right now, it's a current project, I can do Control-Alt-A, it adds it to a text file. If I do Control-Alt-I, open current work files, it then PowerShell will read that text file and load all the files I'm currently working on. So if I'm working on 10 files for 10 different scripts or whatever, I can do Control-Alt-I and have 10 scripts open just like that. And they could be anywhere on my computer, as long as they've been added. And Control-Alt-E, well, here, just to show you. So Control-Alt-E opens up my file. If I decide I'm done with one of them, I just manually delete it and save the file. If I wanted to, I could do Control-Alt-A, and it would load all of those, and I can get back to work right away. So you can kind of play with that, because it's on GitHub, so if you want to fork it or do something else with it, feel free. And it's completely open for you, all taking advantage of the PowerShell ISE. So who uses the ISE? What other tips and tricks do you guys do that I didn't show you? Yeah.
I use it to call actually a module where I have my what I call stock script, and basically it will have a content file in XML for every script I write, and it will call like I can have the variables node, and I will just put key value pairs, and I will put like new variables with new values, and automatically when my script start, then it will be called, and so basically I wrote a snippet for that.
Is that shared or published anywhere?
With my colleagues. So, but I can show you if you want.
No, don't show me. You need to show everyone else who's here. So you need to publish it and post it and so people know. I mean, that's how we, that's why we do the summit, so that we can share things. I just have the opportunity to come and show you and share what I'm doing, but I want all of you, to be able to do that as well. Was there anything I showed you that looked like worth your time and not going into Krishna's session? Sure. I gave you an opportunity to go. Any other questions? Comments?
One thing that I do is I change the color coding, so I have black screen and then change the...
Yes, you can. For those of you who don't know, you can come under View, Tools, Options, and you can change all the scheme. You can actually, and I think my scripting module has a few themes that I borrowed from people. So I can come here, for example, if I want, like this Vim theme. So now that changes all of my color schemes to something that's more...
Try pressing Control-N.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. Well, and that's why themes are, you can change all the color schemes, but there's a lot of things to change. So it's not, and you have to be careful with some things depending upon if you are using like write host or write verbose, write warning, and all, they have a different colorization for the stream. So it does take a little trial and error. And if you do that and publish a theme, like this Vim theme was actually published online a couple years ago, so I just downloaded it. You can then come here and then share it with people, publish it somewhere, because then under Tools, Options, you can come here and do Manage Themes and then do Import. Or if you're creating one, there's an export, it creates a special XML type file. You can then share it with someone, they can import, and they can have the theme that you have. And my time is up, and I'll be around, for the next couple of days. So if you have questions, let me know. I think we're going to have lunch here soon. Thank you all very much.